right now, Tay. What did I tell you about going to my purse?
Where's the weapon?
My purse.
Do not reach in that bag until we're done here. Drop the bag and stay in the car.
What's going on? No, what did you do? I'm gonna call you. No.
So I'm going to ask each of you all a separate question, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Hodge. So your son has his driver's license. Have you spoken with him about how he must conduct himself or an experience similar to this?
Of course. So even before getting his license, when I was prepping him, we went over the paths of not wearing a hood. You must always make sure that they can see your face. If you get pulled over, to keep your hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see you, no matter if he's white, black, Chinese, whatever. You are a young black man, and they will not look at you and see that you have a learning disability. One time we did get pulled over. Me, him, and my mom was in the car coming from Kentucky Fried Chicken in Chippewa. He had his permit at the time, and when you come out of the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Chippewa, it's tight coming out. Well, he hit the curb. The police officer followed us from the KFC all the way to the graveyard right there on Darlington Road. So he was nervous, so he slowed down. And the police officer said, "Do you know why I'm pulling you over?" My son is 16, he had no idea. Of course, me, I got an attitude. Now I'm just telling the truth. I said, "Well, you scared him. He's scared now. You should have get that way back up in Chippewa." So I handed my license, I told Chris to give him his permit, and I said, "Well, honestly, you should have pulled him over way back there." And he said, "Well, he's going slow." I said, "Yeah, because you scared him." I said, "Honestly, you probably should have handled this a different way." Well, I thought he was drinking. I said, "He's 16. Could you not tell that he was a young driver?" I said, "Maybe you should have handled this a little bit differently, because now I'm looking at this as if, was this race, or was you really thinking that maybe he was drinking?" I said, "But the distance that you waited to pull him over, I'm looking at this different." So we really had to have a long talk after that happened, the do's and the don'ts, and what he could go through if he got pulled over. And I had to break it down for him to understand what could really happen, if he gets pulled over. It's hard enough when you do understand it, but it's even harder when they don't understand it. And I had to encourage him to get back out there to drive again, because that does dampen their spirits.
Thank you for sharing, and just think about, such a blessing that you were there in the moment to be able to model and walk through that experience with him, because that would have been a very different first experience for him and every party involved. So thank you for sharing. So, Dr. Johnson, considering also that you're a mother and we're a member of law enforcement, do you have conflicting emotions on how the interaction went during the traffic stop?
Well, my son is just starting to drive, and he just got his permit as well. As far as, I like the fact that it was an African-American officer, because I think people need to understand that it's not always based on race. Sometimes it is perception as a law enforcement officer, and it's not always just the fact that it might be an African-American male or female, but in here it was an African-American officer as well. And it looks like it was basically seriously a misunderstanding from the point of the gun being in the purse, and the officer just listened. That's all he heard. He didn't hear anything else. He didn't even really address the fact that this young lady did have some problems going on, right? Some things, some disabilities. And I don't know, for me, I think I would have definitely handled that a different way as an officer, but a lot of times you just really don't know, and the training is a big part of it. And like Chief said, this is a video that definitely needs to be shown in the law enforcement world, in the world, period, but definitely so officers can get a better understanding of what that looks like when you have someone that has an actual disability. I've made mistakes out there, and one that could have been very costly where I actually thought a young man had a gun as well, and he did not have a weapon, but he was reaching like there was a weapon, and I did have my gun pointed out. Thank the Lord God, he did not allow me to pull the trigger, but I didn't know it actually was a phone. So with my own children, yes, I definitely warn them of it could happen. Even though mom comes from a law enforcement background and so does dad, it doesn't mean it can't happen to you. You still need to be aware, like you said. Put your hands up. If you're driving, listen to what the officer is saying. Don't talk back. Just deal with whatever the officer wants you to do. If there's an issue, we can deal with it later. But I want you to come home. I want you to live. And sometimes it just means like, let's just suck it up for right now. Don't say anything, and we'll deal with it later. And if the officer is wrong, there are measures that you can take to correct that, but we can't get you back. So.
Thank you for your honesty and transparency. You know, for a long time, there's such a disconnect sometimes between law enforcement and community. And, you know, just having that real, honest, transparent, like, hey, I'm sitting up here on this panel, but I've been in these situations, you know, I've experienced this. And just talking through so people can understand that you're a person on the other side of that too. I think I appreciate that honesty, because I think sometimes we all forget that we're going to make mistakes, and it might cost us someone's life, and that's heavy. So I'm actually going to ask you to pass it back to Ms. Cosby, and I'm going to give it back to you. But Ms. Cosby, knowing and hearing that perspective, how does it feel having a child that lives with an invisible disability and having her portrayed as being killed?
It was rough. It was rough to write, but excuse me. The day that we filmed on day 2 to have to actually assist with putting the blood on her and, you know, having her lay there, and, you know, we're trying to get her all positioned and everything. At first in the moment, obviously I was just like rushing, we had to get things going. But then as I stepped back and I'm watching them get the shot, it messed me up for a minute, you know. And I just had to remember, this is not real. It's not going to happen. She's covered. But it was tough. You know, like I said, even just having her in it and knowing the content was rough enough. But kudos to Amari.
For Amari, please.
I mean, she laid there and like these random like ants and stuff, and I know I'm not doing like that. And so I'm trying to get all the stuff away. Like, we're like, you can't move. We're trying to get the bugs away, but you can't move. And she's like, okay. But she's laying there. But she did an amazing job. So I'm proud.
Well, Amari, you're definitely better than me. Ms. Susan, I do want to direct this next question to you. As someone that actively works with a lot of different people that live with invisible disabilities, you know, between watching the video and the experiences you have, you know, each disability is different, right? What are some things you think would be super important for us as community members and law enforcement to know about this wonderful population?
Well, like you said, everyone is an individual first and foremost. So you can't just look at students with special needs as cookie cutters, that everyone is just alike. When I'm looking at this video, first, again, Amari, you did an amazing job. You truly, truly did. And Portia, oh my goodness, amazing. I think of my students, all my different students, and I think of all the different disabilities that they might have. And you know, sometimes it's scaffolded. So it's not just one disability. There's a primary diagnosis, and then there's a possible second diagnosis, and others after that. So I think of my students with special needs that are ID, intellectually disabled, and then maybe what if they had autism,
Yep.
and then what if they had mental health on top of that? So we're talking about maybe bipolar. And so to be in and I have worked with students that have had an array of diagnoses. And how would they respond to that? That's just heart-wrenching to me, because some of them just don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, and some of them would be over anxious and respond inappropriately, especially if they're by themselves, because we last year we had a young lady, and she's simply amazing, but she was driving back and forth to programming by herself from Hopewell, and thank God there were no problems, but I always wonder about the ones that do get their license. If something abnormal happens, you know, because Tonya, like yourself, you have gone over all the situations you think that could possibly happen when Christopher's driving. But what about that atypical situation? That's the ones that we have to worry about, because then, you know, you have not been able to prepare him for those. And you can't think of every situation that could possibly happen. And that's what concerns me about our students when they go to get their license. And it's not only just the driver you have to be concerned about. Amari was the passenger. And so what if one of our students with special needs overreacts? You know, that could put everybody in jeopardy there. So it's very concerning. And I'm thinking that, you know, with our program, we're always talking about pedestrian safety and, you know, keeping our students safe. But I think we really, really need, this is going to be a series of lessons that we have back at BCRC, I can tell you, in the next couple upcoming weeks.
And thank you for just shedding light on the complexity.
Yes.
People that live with disabilities. It's not a one size fits all. So there's no one solution that's going to solve every problem. So I really appreciate that. Chief, I would love to hear your perspective on the situation overall, you know, from a law enforcement standpoint, and as a chief of police, you know, in this situation, you would be responsible to respond. You know, there could be a lot of public outcry and things like that. Given the situation, what are your thoughts?
Just kind of piggybacking, you know, so just briefly, I got into law enforcement because I was a young individual. My parents had to talk with me years ago whenever I was 16, and I was driving to work with a buddy of mine, and next thing you know, we're pulled over outside of the city in the suburb, and an officer had a gun pointed to my head. And you know, I thought to myself, this is it, I'm done. And thank God we made it out of that. And I went home, and I was blessed to have parents, and we had dinner every night. And I'm sitting down talking, how was your day? And I explained to my parents what happened, and they said, how are you gonna handle it? And fast forward, I thought, you know, maybe if I become a police officer, I could change things from within. 30 years later, I don't know if I have. But I've tried to touch everything that I could along my journey. For me, you know, my career has been about connecting with the community. That's one of the things that I came into police, I had to be taught that. I thought that that's how it works. You make these connections with people, right? And then you avoid things like that. And also training. I've been in situations over my course of my career where I've had shots fired at me, you're in bad situations. But this reminds me of just slow down, right? It was a stop for speeding and nothing else. Slow down. And expired registration. Okay, that's paperwork, right? That's in my head what I'm thinking. You want to slow it down. Keep having conversations. Keep talking. And I know, you know, stepping in Duquesne, there's an officer in Allegheny County whose son is autistic, and he goes around and he does do a training for law enforcement. And I had him on campus last summer, and I thought it was impactful to us on that this is something that, you know, I watched it, I'm like, I need to talk with her after this, and figure out how much it costs, and so we could, you know, do this.
She said she told me she wants that Duquesne. That's my mom, so I know they got it. So at this time, I would like to open the floor for a few questions for the panelists.
When you train, do you train specifically by any way or means, anything like this, or just regular police trainings?
So there's different trainings. You start out basic police training, learning the law, learning all the policies and rules. That's the basic training.
Right.
And then to stay certified in Pennsylvania, you have to do electives, 16 hours of electives every year. One of those electives are picked for you is just case law updates, how the laws have changed. And the other things are just electives that chiefs could pick, etc. And there is, it's basic. There is a course on how to handle autism, people with autism.
That's basically what I was trying to say. Do you have a special program to teach the awareness?
There is. There is, for multiple different things.
Yes.
But it's very basic. This here, again, kudos, because it hits here, more importantly, it hits here. And that's a different type of training.
So one of the things that they're doing, I believe it's Slippery Rock, I know that's your place too, right? They have a program, a master's program right now where they're putting social workers through a program alongside of law enforcement officers where they're learning what law enforcement officers do, and now they're trying to place social workers in the vehicles with police officers. So that's something that's being actually tried. I believe Slippery Rock is one of the first schools. It's a master's in social work / law enforcement. And so a lot of my students that I have that are criminal justice students, they are interested in doing something in the criminal justice field, not necessarily law enforcement, but they want to work alongside of law enforcement officers, and it's for reasons just like we just saw. So you need to get with Slippery Rock too. Yeah, it's amazing. And so if it works, I mean, it could help. It could definitely help because they have that expertise and a little bit more how to handle, young people that may have these disabilities, and it may stop, an officer from pulling that gun because they just don't have that understanding.
There's a program already here in Beaver County in existence called BECLEC, okay? And our sister out there, Tammy Tynes, Collier, and Dr. Johnson are part of that program. I'm on the support part of it, but they lead the effort, and it's Beaver County Community and Law Enforcement Coalition, correct? Okay. I got a thumbs up from Tammy. And so they do a really, really good job of coming into the schools and working with our youth and talking about enhancing relationships between the youth and our local law enforcement. We also now need to take that to the next step and bring some of our kids in with special needs and work with them as well.
My question for you, Ms. Susan, or anyone in education, do you have education for the parents of children with special needs or differences? My husband and I watched together, and we had a time about what could have been done, what she could have said. Why didn't she just holler out, she's different? But I'm walking through the mall with my son who's much taller than I am, and people look at him like a grown man. I don't think to say, but he's only 17. So I can imagine what I would not think to say in a situation where I'm terrified. Is there a way to help parents prepare themselves? Does that exist?
I can only speak for Big Beaver Falls Area School District. First of all, we have our special ed director back there, Mrs. Mary Beth Lehman, and we have tried to have parent nights for our students with special needs. Am I correct, Mary Beth?
We've had
in the past, and they were not highly attended. Am I correct?
Correct.
So that means we have, okay, so she said in the past, so that means, and we have our school board president here, Cindy Cook, so that means we have more work to do, right? So then after looking at this, yes, we need to have training for our parents. But we also work, I have the opportunity to work with our intermediate unit, which interacts with all school districts. So that would be something really good to get out through the intermediate unit, Portia. and let them see that and then charge everybody. And Dr. Nugent is really good, our superintendent here at Beaver Falls, and encouraging other superintendents to do things. So we need to talk about that, but it's definitely needed. And hopefully we'll have greater success.
Panel. Would the situation turned out different if the mom would have told the officer that her child with special needs? Also, I want to give a part 2 of that. When kids are, I know that's age sensitive, but when kids are deaf or have issues, they have a card that they carry that they can hand out and inform the person that's dealing with it that they do have special needs.
So that's a great question. So, you know, like especially with the mom and her energy, right? And in this moment. So there were a couple of things. There was one, she's already frustrated, right? She's getting pulled over. Well, she's already on the phone with her sister, you know, talking about her frustrations. I definitely wanted to keep that in here because a lot of people don't even know what an IEP is, and that starts that conversation, right? So she's already irritated because they keep treating her child like she can't do anything. So she's amped up about that. So that becomes this police officer, and she's like, oh, Lord, okay, here we go with this. And then her daughter's in the back, Steady talking about this daggone earbud, you know? And she's like, hey, now is not the time. It didn't portray quite like I wanted to, but there's a moment where she's trying to tell the officer in her own subtle way. And to Amika's point, she probably could have tried to be more clear, but he cut her off. You know, so what she was trying to say was, believe it or not, she's 18. That was kind of her way of trying to put it out there without really calling her daughter out, right, in front of this man, because we have to remember that, you know, they're individuals too, right? And they don't always want to be labeled, so to speak, right, every time you introduce them to someone. I have heard that there are stickers that can go on the windows, right? It says there's someone here that's autistic or someone here with whatever. And I have conflicting feelings about that, right? Because in many ways that labels you, your child, the car, just whatever. Like, and I think that could lead to adverse situations too. So I think it's a slippery slope, right? It's like you don't know what to do, but just to give you some context, she kind of tried, and when she was at the back of the car, she's like, you know, sir, I'm trying to handle my child who doesn't know what's going on. Like, can I get to her, please? And he's so in his own world, and so that's where the on deaf ears came from. If I had a tagline, it would be nobody's listening. And for multiple reasons, right? So you have, you know, Taylor, who wasn't really listening because she's doing her own thing for her reasons. You have, you know, the officer who, as soon as he found out about the gun, he wasn't listening to anything else, right? And then you have the mom who's not listening to his instructions as he's saying stay at the back of the car, right? So, you know, everyone, I guess, had a, you know, played a role, right? Ultimately what happened, but at the end of the day, like Chief Holmes said, like, slow down, right? Because if he would have just stayed at the car instead of walking away when she's in mid-sentence, maybe he would have had a little bit more perspective.
I think I would have paid attention to the fact that mom was trying to get her to count.
Right.
That makes sense to me. If mom is saying, let's count. To me, that's speaking something to the officer, and you said it, Portia, gun. That's what he heard. From that point on, it was like preservation of life, my own safety, officer safety. We're taught to think about officer safety, but as a mom, my oldest son has an IEP, so he has issues. He has social anxieties. He's tried to commit suicide a couple times already. So I'm very understanding, and that's why I believe this really like hit home for me, because he's treated differently, and he's been treated differently definitely in his high school. The exact thing that was happening, he's not able to do anything. How many times did I get called, my husband and I, to the school because he wouldn't talk, and they thought, oh, he's going to be a school shooter, and we went through all of that. So it's very understanding, and there have been times that I've had to sit down with them and say, let's count, because that's just to calm him down and help him to understand you're in a safe place with your mom. So I think hearing that would have definitely sparked something for me.
Give our panelists a round of applause. On behalf of the City of Beaver Falls, we want to take this time to honor you and your commitment to honoring yourself, giving your voice, and letting people know, sorry to keep someone up, that we see you and all the things that you've done to add to the world of writing and directing and arts and creativity really make a difference, not just for us, but for our community. And we thank you for the sacrifices that you've made and for pouring your life out into all of us.
So I'm just gonna say thank you to everyone. The outpouring of support, of love has been beyond anything I could have imagined.